Everyone wants to be innovative. People want their tech stack, their org structure, even their hiring processes to be unique. However, a lot of this uniqueness ends up being waste. The best engineering orgs are pretty much boring. They do things in a way that's straightforward, that's not constantly surprising you and making you have to stop in your tracks and reassess what's happening because you've never seen it before. They are unique, they are innovative in 1, 2, 3 places where it actually counts, and they leave boringness, unremarkableness to roam everywhere else. That's because trying to be remarkable everywhere essentially guarantees being mediocre all over the place. In this video, we're going to talk about the importance of accepting boringness in order to create the real unique things where it matters. By the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm Aviv Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech executive, coach, and consultant, and I help tech organizations become everything they ought to be, and I help people just like you create teams worth leading. Life's too short to lead mediocre teams, and therefore I'm not saying that we need to embrace mediocrity and being boring because that's the way it is. I'm saying that we need to learn that you cannot be unique all over the place. You need to learn where it actually makes sense and pushing there. And we can start breaking it down right now so you understand what you can do to help your team be everything that it can be without attempting to be everything for everyone. In tech, innovation has become some sort of a religion. We have to be innovating all the time. And yes, this comes from someone that has been writing about habitual innovation for years. But don't contrast, don't confuse habitual innovation with constantly trying to be innovative everywhere all the time. That's not possible. And the harsh truth is, when you're innovating all the time, you're essentially just having a lot of rework in disguise. You're not telling yourself, you're not allowing yourself to realize that you're doing a lot of things that might seem cool, innovative, new, but essentially you're just rehashing things without a lot of ROI. You were just trying to always be doing things differently and in a new way, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense. As ridiculous as it might seem when I'm just telling it to you quickly right now, I've repeatedly seen teams like the startup that recently I saw where they decided no logging solution did things exactly like they ought to, and they had a unique situation, and therefore they spent months trying to create their own internal system that still is not better than anything that you can get off the shelf. And they're still not realizing that this is a huge mistake, even though I keep telling them, this doesn't make sense. You can just, in this time, you could have had so much progress in areas that actually matter to the product and have had logging that's only 90% where you need them to be, because those extra 10% probably would not provide you with so much of a difference in your day-to-day that it actually makes sense to spend all the time into that. Yeah, will it be innovative? Sure. Will you have a nice blog post about it? Yeah, probably. But is it actually worth it? I'm guessing not. And that's what we see. And when we don't allow ourselves to say the truth and recognize that even if it's cool, even if the team wants to do it, even if it would be a very nice exercise, as a fellow geek, I would probably like geeking out about all sorts of problems that doesn't make sense in a business context when our time could be put to better use somewhere else. And that's something that we have to realize, that this innovation theater is harming where innovation actually counts. One major area, as I just said, is your tech stack. You want your tech stack to be boring almost everywhere. When you're onboarding new engineers, they need to be able to quickly see and say, oh yeah, that's what I expect, this is what we always do, that sort of stuff. You want the vast majority of things to just be straightforward, and that's because if we're starting from scratch, every little thing that we're doing, if we're like, no, best practices are not a thing for us, we have to think about things. We never take anything for granted. And these are things that sound at face value like, oh yeah, wow, that's amazing, so innovative. They take nothing for granted. They try to see every little things with fresh set of eyes and trying to say, hey, what do I want to do here? What actually makes sense? The problem is that you're just dooming yourself to work so slowly and have your team have to relearn everything and not rely on their hard-learned instincts, on everything that they spent all of their experience gaining. You cannot undo everything and start from scratch and expect it to actually be worth it. When we're allowing ourselves to find new ways of solving this problem and that problem, and every little thing is unique, it means that you cannot rely on your muscle memory. Your new engineers have to spend so much time learning. You cannot find anything online that actually helps you. You can rely on others' experience out there to tell you, oh yeah, they already have that problem and they've tackled it, because everything you do is so unique and so tailored to your specific use case that you cannot gain anything from anyone else's experience out there. It's just insane. You want your engineers spending their time creating value for the company, not relearning the things that they already ought to know how to do because you're doing things differently. That's the line where it makes no sense for you, and it doesn't make any sense for any engineering organization that actually values getting results done, moving the needle, as opposed to just focusing on tech for tech's sake. When you're not boring, every onboarding becomes a nightmare. You cannot easily find people with the right experience to help you move faster. You can find, for example, agencies and consultancies if you need, help in a specific area. You have to do everything by your own, and it's all too slow. And you oftentimes getting coupled to specific solutions, which means that when things change in the industry, it becomes a lot harder for you to adopt them. So you're actually getting the exact opposite of what you want. You're making yourself non-vendor locked to your specific tools that often are so custom made that it's then hard to just pick something off the shelf and add that to your system. And therefore, it's really harming how your team can actually be innovative. That's not what we want to be creating. So once you realize that you want to be boring in your tech stack, so people are not all the time running from place to place trying to find a new innovative way of doing things, that you're optimizing not for novelty in every line of code, but for momentum, in your spending your time on innovation only where it can help you gain even more momentum faster. Now is the time to focus on another area where we're overly innovative at times, and that's your operating system. You don't want to reinvent your organization's operating system from scratch. For example, when we're talking about your ceremonies, about your rituals, about the way you're handling the planning processes, etc., you don't need to start those from scratch either. We've seen things that are battle tested, that are used by so many companies, big and small, and you don't have to find the exact thing that's precisely unique for you as this, the special snowflake that you are. No, you can just use things that are 90%, 95% what you'd see in any other startup, and then only doing the tailorings, the adjustments where it makes sense. Otherwise, you're spending so much time for very little discernible value. Just like with, a nice jacket, a nice suit, you can go bespoke and pay probably 10 times what you'd pay for a very nice made-to-measure jacket that's, off the shelf, just, adjusted a bit to yourself with some alterations, as opposed to working on something so unique that then you will never even allow yourself to put aside, because, oh my God, how can I throw this jacket after only 2 years? This is something that has cost so much, I better use it for like a decade, even though maybe it no longer fits you, maybe you no longer like the style, maybe global warming means that wool no longer makes sense. And that's the same when it comes to our own processes. Oh, why do we have this sort of lattice matrix distributed management system where everyone is reporting to like 5 different people, each person is working on 5 different Jira boards, and you somehow are working in this weird, wave function superposition, and you're not sure about what's happening, who's giving you feedback, but it's cool. You have a very innovative org chart that you had to create an internal tool for just to be able to display it. If that sounds ridiculous, I've seen things that, I'm exaggerating just a bit. I've seen this happen. And that's what happens when we, again, focus too much on our creative senses and not on channeling creativity to where it actually makes sense. I hate it when I see management spending more time crafting unique Notion templates than actually leading the team, actually doing management work. You're not a management think tank. You're not supposed to creating the new corpus of how to lead an engineering organization. You need to actually lead an engineering organization. That's where your focus ought to be. Every change that you need to do is a change that you do because you can see the immediate benefit. It makes sense, and you're not looking for opportunities constantly to do something, but you're doing something where you see that it would pay off. Not your default stance is not what can I change today, right? Your default stance needs to be I'm working, and if I see that something is an obstacle or there's a great opportunity here, then I'm going to be spending my effort on it. And one last example is when it comes to hiring and staffing. When I see companies that have this weird hiring process where they have these interviews that no one has even ever thought about, that things are so complex, and they have these titles that mean nothing to anyone out there looking for a job. They're like, am I a fit or not? Does that mean that I'm doing this or that? Am I even an engineer if I do that? Will I be coding? But they feel like they're cool having all of these ninja and rockstar titles and head of getting things done and all the sorts of things that might look cool on LinkedIn, but just drive people nuts when it comes to working with you, realizing, do I want to be working with you? If I go to an interview, through an interview process as a star engineer, and I'm probably talking to several good companies at the same time, and yours is just insane when I look at it from the outside, how likely is it that I'm going to say, okay, this is probably worth it? I'm sensing something good here. Or am I going to say, okay, this is just too weird and I don't know what these guys are doing, but I don't want to be in that mess. Okay, it's something that I see. And therefore we have to realize, again, what's the benefit of doing things? Are you doing things for the sake of keeping busy and being innovative? Or are you realizing that it doesn't make sense? You want to be boring almost everywhere, and you want to choose those specific areas where breaking out of being boring will actually provide you with the right ROI. And I'll give you one last example that's not a big topic, but something that I'm sure you're doing right now. And this is when we're talking about implementing AI when it comes to coding agents, Cloud Code, Cursor, whatever you're using. Some people have been through the past year where they sort of think our team has to be at the bleeding edge. We have to find out how to use these tools. And they're spending so much time experimenting and trying and doing everything. And frankly, seeing enough teams, I can tell you that a lot of those teams are actually wasting their time because perhaps it's cool, but at the end of the day, you specifically watching this video, you don't have to be the one company that invents how to be an amazing AI coder. What you need to do is to ensure that your people learn from others doing things and pick up on those good experiments. Let others waste their time finding out what works, see which blog posts are actually topping Hacker News because they have good information for you to try to mimic. Find those best practices and grab them fast. I'm not saying you need to wait 2 years before doing anything, but there's a vast difference between being the complete laggard and being the one at the bleeding edge inventing things. You don't want to be wasting your time on all of these experiments that aren't going to work out. You don't want to be just way too behind. You want to find a good sweet spot. And when you do that, then your team can use those tools to be innovative when it comes to the actual product, not being innovative about how we're being innovative. I don't like that. I think that when teams realize what's actually important, they keep asking themselves, what do we want to get out of this? Why am I doing this? Is it because this feels cool, or is it because I can see what will be the benefit if this works out? If we're able of making that distinction, we are more likely to remain in alignment. One last bit, where should you be? Non-boring, where you see that the barbell bet is gonna pay off. When you notice that implementing a new algorithm in a specific area of the system can become a major tech mode, where you see that a new technology maybe provides you with a way of doing things that others can't. Where does it make sense to reinvent your operating system? For example, think about a few years back where you didn't have people doing hybrid all over the place, where you didn't have Zoom all over the place before COVID, and then when I saw companies saying, no, we actually don't want to be clustered in one place because we want to get global talent from all over our country or all over the continent or whatever, those had innovative operating systems when it comes to how they work in order to get innovative talent. That's something that actually paid off. That's where they strategically chose an area to do things differently and utilize that. So you have to ensure that when you're doing things, it's because you're going to get a payoff that you think is going to be worth the hassle and then some. Something that's a healthy bet. You're not going through a lot of the rework, a lot of the innovative and novelty and creativity hassle just to end up going out of it with a 1.2% improvement. That's usually not worth it. We want our innovation to go where it actually moves the needle, where we can clearly see this was worth it. And when you're focusing there, and usually we're talking about less than a handful of areas in each year, then every bit of creativity that goes into that is going to really help you, and the team can spend most of its time not racking its brains about how did we say that we deploy this week, but about getting things done and moving the needle. That's it for this video. I hope I got you thinking a bit and that I wasn't too boring in making you boring. If you have any questions, comments, let me know in the comments. I would love to know. And if you haven't yet, do check out my newsletter. A link will be in the video description. I'll see you here in the next video. Ciao.